Good evening, everyone. I'm now sitting out here in this shithole weather, waiting for a bus that won't actually turn up, because, as we all know, the bus service here in Norwich is fucking useless. But of course you didn't come here to hear me complain about the useless service I'm getting. No, I wanted to talk a little more about the politics of what's going on here, because I think I do need to make it quite clear that there are some people out there who still cling on to this idea of conspiracy theories, who cling to this idea of people are nut jobs if they think of anything other than the mainstream agenda. Sorry, putting my shit in my bag and my hat as well that I actually claim from this place. Anyway, there are a lot of people who like to claim people are nut jobs or conspiracy theorists. For example, when it came down to COVID 1984, in regards to the passports, is probably one of the biggest examples out there. When people were complaining about the lockdowns and what have you, there were some people who said they're going to be bringing in COVID passports next, so that you have to show that to be able to do anything. Hell, they were even considering it for doing anything, like you'd have to present like your COVID, basically your COVID-3 certificates and what have you, just to be able to go anywhere like bowling or to the cinemas, and that you had to wear a face nappy in order to be able to go in. One prime example, they were saying they'll be bringing in COVID passports next, and the people who mentioned it were completely lambasted by the left-wing sheeple and the left-wing media. They were told they were conspiracy theorists and nut jobs. And then look what happened later down the line when Sarky Javid got into power. He wanted to bring up COVID passports. Or other places like Austria, where you had to have a COVID passport and you were forced to take the vaccine if you wanted to do anything there. Hell, New Zealand was even doing that as well. They said that they'll force vaccines on us next. They were called nut jobs. Look what happened. And we nearly had it here as well in Britain. The situation is right now, there are a lot of quote-unquote conspiracy theories, and some of them are just that. However, there are some who are predicting the future with these. People who are predicting what's going on in this country, and yet they're being called basically loony people. I think we should be paying a lot more credence to some of these people, because they may be onto something. What was it that Rick Mayall, a great comedian, I actually need to watch some of his shows, he's probably got some good shit on there, and I've seen some YouTube clips as well. Anyway, Rick Mayall, great comedian, he actually put out a little documentary / short film about some of the conspiracy theories going on. 9/11. And one that I do know to be true is bioengineered vaccines or viruses. Does anybody remember when someone actually put out on Facebook that they were finding, I think it was called hydra vulgaris or something vulgaris. They were finding variants of the hydra in these vaccines. They were finding these things that could basically regenerate and could live off your brain cells, your brain stem and what have you. But of course, if you tried to mention this, you'd immediately have your video struck off of YouTube for medical misinformation. And of course, you'd be called all the usual spiel of a nut job and a conspiracy theorist. God, now I'm having bloody trouble trying to sit down. Unbelievable. 34 minutes late, this bus, by the way. Anyway, there were people who mentioned the vulgaris and they would have their YouTube videos struck off. I know I mentioned it a few times. I know I mentioned quite a few things about COVID 1984. That the World Health the World Health Organization, or maybe I was right first time, and the lamestream media and the left-wing Silicon Valley groups did not want up on here, that I was forced to put up on places like Rumble and BitChute. How do you explain that one? I'll tell you how it is. Fascism at its finest. You know, deliberately stopping any kind of political opposition, stopping any other side of the argument coming out. The unequivocal definition of fascism. But they won't tell you that. There are some other conspiracy theories that I don't know if they're true or not. Flat Earth is one of them, and one of my friends is a flat earther. Do I call him a nutjob? Do I call him a conspiracy theorist? No, I don't. Because I'm open-minded. That's the thing. The brain is like an open vessel. You can let as much information in as you like. You can choose to listen to one side of the argument or not to. Which is why you see a lot of left-wing sheeple don't want to listen to things called facts. Things like logic. Things like evidence. While people on the right wing do tend to try and speak the truth on certain matters that they don't want us to talk about. That's the thing. Things like COVID that they didn't want us to talk about, and they called us conspiracy theorists and what have you. Look who was right in the end, and look who looked fucking stupid. The left-wing media and sheeple who tried to sweep it all conveniently under the rug, like it was not there. Like it was just another tissue to put to one side. I'm surprised some of them are not soaked in the salty tears of the left, especially regarding Brexit and what have you. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of these people out here who have been labelled conspiracy theorists, I think, as said, we should be taking them not as gospel, but I think we should listen to them at the very least. Do our research and actually make a conscious decision. Because, for example, in about 8 years, when I'm in my 40s, I might decide maybe one day I'll try and find someone I want to settle down with. But I don't know that. I would try to think of all the rational things that to and against. And then I'd make my decision. The same applies here in any kind of political debate or conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to make my decision until I know the facts, until I know what's going on. Now, admittedly, I am naturally biased against the mainstream media and the government because of all the lying and the bollocks that come out of their mouths. How do you know a politician's lying? Because his mouth starts moving, or his lips, or whatever you want to call them. It's a shame, really, that this is how we have to see politicians, because I'd like to think there should be maybe the odd few who can actually tell the truth and would actually make good prime ministers out there. But unfortunately, we're stuck with the muppets that we've got right now. And we're stuck with people who want to control us, who want to screw us over. Another thing linked to COVID-1984, there's a theory put out by my flat earth friend that there's also going to be something called climate control, or regional control, I should say, where he believes that COVID was just a precursor. It was a test. Because what they plan to do in some parts of this country and other parts of the world is they want to restrict people based on their region. And what this would be is that basically, like, I live in Norwich, and there may be a few other outlying towns and what have you that lie within Norfolk and Norwich, and that would be one zone, and then you'd have, like, I don't know, London as another zone with all its boroughs and what have you, and you'd have Manchester and its own zone, and then you'd have Brighton and its own zone. You get where I'm going. Now, he claims that the government, or these councils and what have you, want to restrict us by these regions, and that every time you want to travel out of these regions, like, I don't know, maybe I want to go to Cromer to enjoy a nice time on the beach, or maybe I want to go to some other place. I can't even remember where Stonehenge is, that's how bad it is. Anyway, maybe I would like to go to see Stonehenge, or maybe I'd like to see the Blackpool Tower. But if you do that, apparently they're allotting days that you're allowed out of your region for the it's either the entire week or the entire month, most likely the latter. So you'd have like 5 days in a month, and every time you go out of your region for a day, that would be one of your 5 days you're allowed to use up. And then when you go over 5, then you're breaking the law and can face fines and what have you, just for fucking travel. You couldn't make this stuff up. And think about it, digest it, because the way I slice it is, if the government can do multiple lockdowns of this country, if they could do it back in 2021 and 2022, what's stopping them from doing it again in the planned year of 2024? Nothing. Is it gospel yet? No. Is it something we should think about? Absolutely. There are already people, I think We've Got a Problem is also talking about it as well. About that whole restrict people by their regions. And of course, what do you think the left-wing media and sheeple are going to do? They're going to call us conspiracy theorists. They're going to call us lunatics, idiots, maybe even retards. Though I'd love to see the woke brigade try that. There was also a theory about the Great White Reset. Now, let me be clear, I'm against white supremacy. I hate the idea of it. I hate the idea of genuine racism, and I would stand against it with every fibre of my fucking being. But I do see some of the logic in some of their arguments. Think about it. Where are most of the migrants coming from? They're mostly coming from third world, bluntly speaking, third world shitholes and the Middle East, basically. They're coming out from places which are doing probably worse off than what the UK is providing. In their home country, here's a prime example, Romania. And that's not to say Romania's people are third world shitholes, let me be clear. The Romanians, back in the 2010s, there was actually something that came out that stated that if they came over to the UK, they would basically be earning 10 times the salary that they would be, or nearly 10 times, than what they would be receiving back home. So in that regard, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I can't blame these people for trying to come over here. But where are a lot of these people coming from? As I said, Middle East, Asia, that kind of place. Primarily the Middle East and Africa and what have you. Third world shitholes, basically. And of course, we all know a lot of them are mostly tanned or dark coloured. And again, as I said, I'm against racism and what have you. But I have to make it clear that in Africa, you're not going to see a mostly white country there, are you? Because it's mostly black people who live there. But when a lot of people from these countries, or even Albania, are coming over, fighting-age, middle-aged men, coming over as economic migrants, aka illegal immigrants, most of them, because please bear in mind that a lot of these people are crossing through to France, or Calais, and France is still in the EU last time I checked, by the way. France, being part of the EU, naturally, if these people were genuine asylum seekers, they would have claimed refuge in the first safe EU country they got to. And if it was France, they would do it there. But of course they haven't, because they want a piece of the gravy train, and who can fucking blame them? A bit like our MPs with regards to Brussels and the European Union, which is why they were reluctant to give us an EU referendum. But this is diverting a little bit from the point of the White Reset. We're getting all these migrants coming in, whether it's for cheap labour or whether it's to increase our diversity and tolerance and inclusion, which is frankly a load of bollocks, because look what happened. Because now 55% of the knife crimes committed in the UK, in London in particular, are committed by black gangs. 84% of the grooming gang crimes committed around this country are done by Pakistani Muslim men, primarily. And what is it doing by bringing all these people in? Well, obviously, it's putting something against white people. Because you put one white person, then you put one black person. Though it's more like you're putting hundreds of thousands of tanned and dark people in the country, and it obviously means that white people start to become a minority. Hell, they've even started becoming a minority in some of the London fucking boroughs. So this White Reset theory is not entirely bogus. It is not entirely bullshit, like the mainstream media would like you to believe. And it's this kind of thing, and COVID 1984, and some people with 9/11, and for all I know, Flat Earth could be true. I don't know. But the point is, I think we should pay these people a lot more attention. We should be careful not to be brainwashed. We should be careful not to fall victim to actual propaganda, whether it's left or right wing. But we should listen to them. Have an open mind, because it may surprise you. How else do you think I start to know some of these things? And of course, somehow from my viewers, of course. The left-wing media and the left-wing sheeple love throwing out name tags. They like throwing them out like they're going out of fashion. A bit like Balenciaga or whatever it's called. Anyway, we should be paying these people more attention, listening to them, and then making our own informed decision after seeing both sides. I did see both sides. For example, with Tommy Robinson. I saw how he was being prosecuted, and maybe I very briefly thought that he was racist at first, and that maybe the BBC were right. But then you see the other side, and then you're like, hang on a minute, is he really racist, or is this just the media trying to do smear tactics? Likewise, the face nappies regarding COVID 1984. Remember how they were saying, oh, you need to wear a face mask, you need a social distance, you need to do this, that and the other. And then it turned out, a lot of the people who said that the masks don't do anything, who were flagged and taken down for medical misinformation, were fucking right. The disposable face nappies in particular, 90% ineffective. 90%. And the vaccine has actually caused more people to get more ill from the side effects of it. One Tory MP even brought up in a, I think it was a question time meeting in the House of Commons, he brought up that there was a cover-up, that the vaccine was having side effects including inflaming the arteries around the heart. How do you explain that one? Well, this doesn't come out of thin air. The people who were saying that the vaccine will do more harm than good, they turned out to be right. Hell, it may stop you from dying from COVID, but it won't stop you from dying from other fucking things. But the media won't tell you that. We need to take the so-called conspiracy theory name tags out of this equation and listen to these people. Because they're normal human beings as well. Just like I am. I just have a few extra chins. So that's why I look like a mutant. Haha, self-burn. Those are quite rare. Anyway, the point is, listen more to these people. Because at the end of the day, the media is not here to give you the full picture. The media is here to slander you, to put a name tag on you, and brand you like cattle. And then herd you all like sheeple off the nearest fucking cliff. And if we don't start listening to the people who are trying to guide us, the real shepherds, as it were, the real people who want to guide us out of danger, or become the wolves that actually see through the bullshit that the media and the left like to push, we will end up going over that cliff, all because we decided to be close-minded and not listen to those who had a better picture. My name's Tabima, also known as Apathorex, and I am, as always, very, very bad news for our crooked establishment, the left-wing Silicon Valley groups who run Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. The sheeple on the left who can't think for themselves. And of course, most importantly, the lamestream media, who think it's alright to label people like cattle, just because they don't agree with the mainstream narrative. That may not be correct. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and most importantly, fuck the government.